Great. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Brittany. I am the Global Scholars intern. Essentially, that means I do a lot of event planning for the Global Scholars program, which is a scholarship program that was founded in 2017 to help students pay for study abroad. It does require that you study abroad, and it requires that you take 4 semesters of a language, as well as a special section of UC 160, which is an introduction to college, really. And also a special seminar just for incoming students. And it teaches more about global issues and how to look at the world in a global perspective. I am an international studies and Spanish double major with minors in economics and French. Yeah, but without further ado, I'm gonna get started and I'm gonna just talk about our panelists, give a little background about each of them. And if you could all just like give a wave and say hello so that we know, who we're talking to, that would be wonderful. So first off, we're gonna go with Hayley. Hayley graduated in 2014 with a double major in genetics and Spanish and a minor in psychology. She then went on to pursue a master's of science in genetic counseling at OSU. She now works as a genetic counselor at The Ohio State University. In the fall of 2012, she went to Quito, Ecuador through IES. Okay, and then we have Kate. Yeah, thank you. Then we have Katie. So Katie graduated in 2019 with a degree in environmental science. She's from Toledo, Ohio, but currently at Miami University working on her master's in environmental science. While at OU, Katie spent her spring of 2018 at the Uppsala University in Sweden. And you can correct me if that's wrong, Katie.
Uppsala, yeah.
Uppsala, perfect. And then Tommy is not here. I haven't seen him. But Abbi is. So Abbi graduated in the spring of last year with a major in zoology and a minor in Black World Studies. She's originally from Indianapolis and is currently pursuing a master's in evolution, ecology, and behavior at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. While at OU, Abbi took the travel learning course that went to Tanzania in fall 2017. Abbi, if you could give a wave.
Yeah, hi. I studied abroad the whole semester. It was the entire
Is it really?
Yeah, it's different from the travel learning course.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks for correcting me on that.
Yeah, no problem.
Also a 2020 graduate, Gretchen got her degree in pre-med biology in Spanish. Originally from Hudson, Ohio, she's currently pursuing a master's in global health and epidemiology and biostatistics at Boston University. For her Spanish major, Gretchen spent the fall of her senior year in Salamanca.
I actually just, sorry, correct you on my degree. It's a master's of public health and global health and epidemiology.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with these questions. So if actually all of you could answer this one, did you stay with a host family in campus housing or an apartment? Did these living arrangements impact your experience, and if so, how?
I'll go first. So I did live with a host family in Ecuador. And for the purposes of learning a language, I definitely found that beneficial. I think if you're in more of a situation where you're forced to speak the language and you're not living with another American student or another English speaker, that's just another great way to really immerse yourself, not only from a language standpoint, from a cultural standpoint as well.
I can go next. So I did the OU in Tanzania program. So it was a Black World Studies program. And there were 10 of us who went. So we all stayed like together. We didn't stay all 10 of us in like a host family situation. But we kind of traveled around and we were always, I guess, in places like we didn't stay in like fancy hotels or anything. So we were in rural areas mostly. with the local people. So, but we were like as a group together all the time. So, yeah.
Got it.
I guess I can go next. So I had, for my program, just as a preface, they no longer do the Salamanca program. They do the in Pamplona now. So for my program, I had the option of either being a host family or staying in a dorm, and I personally chose staying with a family just because it was more immersion, like Hayley was saying, and that definitely like helped with Spanish for me.
Yeah, so in Sweden, I stayed in student housing, which was basically, I lived in a corridor with about 12 other people. I had my own bedroom and bathroom, but we shared a common kitchen. And they tried to split us all up. So I was in a program, CIEE. And so they tried to make sure like we were all in the same corridor. So I met 11 other people in my corridor. We shared the kitchen, and most of them were international students. Most of them, there was a few Swedish students, but that was a really cool experience because sometimes we would all be in there cooking dinner or lunch at the same time.
That sounds super fun. Okay, next question. While studying abroad, with whom did you engage? Was it other Americans, foreigners, natives? How might that have affected your experience while abroad? And this is also a question for all of you. So if Hayley, you want to get started again?
Sure. Yeah, since I was living with a host family, I obviously interacted plenty with them and their family members, and they showed me around a lot. For most of my actual classes, I was with a group of students from the States in IES. So they kind of had their own separate classrooms, and that's where we spent most of our time from an education standpoint. But I also had one class at the local university in Quito where I was the only non-Ecuadorian student. And so there was a good mix of spending time with other students from the States who were also, since it was an outside program, it was not an OU specific program. So they were also all people that I didn't know for the most part. But I think it was a good blend, and especially taking a course in the local university in Quito, I stood out like a sore thumb. And so it was, again, a good opportunity for me to practice my Spanish and make some new friends and engage on that level, but also just kind of to experience something as a white person in the United States. I'm not used to standing out. And so that was just a good experience, a little bit of discomfort to gain some perspective coming home.
Yeah, for sure. I get that. Abby, if you want to go.
Yeah, sure. So we were with each other a lot, like the group of 10 kind of did everything as a group. How we had classes and stuff. We actually had some professors that were Tanzanian professors. So that was a really interesting experience and a neat experience to be able to be taught not all the classes by Professor Skandor, who's the Swahili professor there, but to actually have professors from, I think it was the University of Dar es Salaam that they were at. So that was a neat experience. We really traveled around the country kind of, so we interacted with Native people every day, the local people every day. We kind of would go out and just venture, not by ourselves, but like as a group, especially later in the semester when we were more comfortable with just like going out with just a couple of us. And like I took Swahili for the first year before I came, but also continued taking it when we were there. So that was really helpful to be able to just go out and just start talking to people. Like it was not as scary as it seems, especially when you're in a group of people. And it was also interesting to get to know, even though we were all from OU, we didn't all know each other. A lot of them I'd never seen before. So that was a really interesting group dynamic. And then we kind of got paired up. We stayed at a boarding high school for somewhat of our time, and we got paired up with a student from the boarding high school to kind of, we had like a research project, and they were kind of our partners on the research project. So it was really neat to be able to interact with some of the teenagers there and kind of build a personal relationship with some of the youth there. And that also helped improve our Swahili. I mean, they laughed at us a lot, but it was very helpful. So yeah.
Hi again. So for my program was done like through OU with the Universidad de Salamanca. So in terms of like, in terms of like my classes, I was constantly around 5 other people who were in the program from OU, and that is who I had like a couple core classes with, but also like within me being able to choose my own courses, I met other international students who were there from other programs, of which the majority were Americans or people from Thailand and China, Brazil, but the majority were American. But in terms of like all the activities I did, again, everything was like with Abby a very group dynamic. So in my program, we had organized trips much like hers, where we went to northern Spain for a week, then we went to Madrid for a week, and then we went to southern Spain over Thanksgiving for 10 days. It was beautiful. So really everything I did was within a group. I really wasn't ever on my own, which is nice too. However, I didn't really have a strong interaction with locals, but I do know for the incoming Pamplona program, they will pair students with a student guide to kind of help them, be your little amigo. But yeah.
Yeah, so my program was similar, I think, to Hayley's, where it was an American program, but it wasn't through OU. But for my program, we were basically able to enroll in any English spoken class at the university. So most of my classes, I did not know anybody in my program. Interestingly, Uppsala University, about 1/3 of the students are international students, and a lot of them do go there to study abroad. So I met people just basically from all over the world in my classes. I would say my main friends were the ones I've met through my program, the Americans, but I did meet a lot of friends just from lots of places, some from Sweden, just some from Australia, Japan, China, that also became really good friends and I still try to keep in touch with. Additionally, at my program, the student life was very active. So they had these things called student nations, and it was basically like a social group that you joined, and then you could basically visit any student nation, but you're part of one. I guess kind of not really like Greek life, but that's probably the closest thing I could connect it to. And you would do things with them too, and you would meet people, but you would also be able to branch out and visit any student nations, and they had pubs, clubs, fancy dinners that you could attend. So just lots of events that were very open to international students, but where you also got to meet a lot of Swedish students as well.
Yeah, I studied abroad in Brazil my senior year of high school, and I was closest with the Brazilians, but I did through my program get to meet a ton of people from around the world, and I'm like you, Katie. It's nice to have friends in all parts of the world. It really is. So my next question is, how was your experience while studying abroad related to your major or science oriented? Were there certain challenges you faced, or were there certain advantages from the study abroad that you gained? Hayley, can you start this one out as well?
Sure. So I went to Ecuador for the Spanish major portion of my studies. That was kind of the main goal. But since I also had a double major in the sciences, I kind of had my courses spread out across. I mean, there was obviously Spanish classes and literature, but also we had courses about like social history in Ecuador, environmental sciences. I also had kind of service learning where I picked to help out at the local botanical garden. So I was tending to orchids in my spare time, which was kind of neat. And also helping tutor local college students in English. So it was really a good hodgepodge of different things to study in kind of an international context. And especially to helping with some of the other university students, it's a good perspective to learn just how difficult the English language is to learn. But overall, I think it didn't hinder me too much in my sciences, that in my genetics major. I think I kind of planned around for it, knowing that I was a science major, and I knew that I needed to maneuver things around. And I honestly can't remember if I was able to count anything toward science credits. But overall, just kind of the general experience of putting yourself well outside of your comfort zone. I think that's where some of the best learning happens and some of the most impactful life experiences that I was able to come back with. And just, it was a major confidence boost. Once you put yourself in those sorts of situations and realize you can navigate a foreign country and you'll figure it out and you'll be fine, that makes other challenges that you come back to feel a little bit easier.
Thank you. Gretchen, you want to take this one too?
Yeah. So when I was going to Spain, actually in my program, I had the option of doing an internship. So I actually did an internship through the university at a lab, and I believe I did about 20 hours of research or work, and that was really interesting just because, again, I've done research internships before, but never in Spanish. So my instructor was like very helpful in terms of like, I felt like I learned more sometimes there than my classes sometimes. But overall, in terms of applications, like your future, I actually wrote a TPG I was a senior last year, and so in the spring of last year I went to Costa Rica to study the health literacy of Spanish speakers. And I felt like coming back from Spain the semester prior really did enhance my ability to speak. And so in Costa Rica, I really didn't have a problem speaking to like the directors and patients. So in terms of like your career, I have a global oriented career like in my degree, and I want to study and research Spanish speaking populations. So for me, it was very deliberate for me to go to Spain, and I thought it very, very much did help for what I'm doing now.
That's a really unique opportunity. I didn't even know that the Salamanca program had that. So that's really, really exciting. Tommy, I just saw that you were joined, so I'm going to go ahead. And Tommy is from the class of 2020. He majored in geology and minored in geography. He's from Duxbury, Massachusetts, if I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, that's it.
Perfect. But currently works for an architectural data capture and modeling company in Boston. The spring of his junior year, Tommy studied in Dunedin, New Zealand, at the University of Otago through Arcadia. So welcome, Tommy. We've gotten a couple questions so far. To catch you up, what was your housing arrangements while you were studying abroad? Were you in a host family? Did you have campus housing? Did that impact your experience at all?
Yeah, so I just want to say I'm really sorry I'm late, everyone. I'm in the car right now driving back from work. We were in a scan. I've been scanning a hospital for the company I'm working for. And there was like a crazy lockdown in the hospital. There was like a code blue, and then there was a whole scene. So we got stuck at work for a little longer than I thought. I'm in the car now, so I'm good to answer some questions. So yeah, I studied in Dunedin, New Zealand. Tough to say, I know. I after the spelling, I got that wrong before I went down there and learned how to say it. And I lived in a flat, so they were called uni flats. So the way they set it up at my university was they were like 5-person flats, which is what that means is it's like an apartment where there are 4 to 5 rooms. And then there's like a shared living room and a kitchen and a dining area. And so the way they set it up for me in New Zealand is they tried to have at least like 1 or 2 Kiwis, they call the New Zealanders. So they tried to have 1 to 2 Kiwis in each flat, and then they'd have 3 or 4 Americans, not Americans, mostly Americans, but international students. So they're kind of from all over the place.
Gotcha. Okay. And then did you spend most of your time with foreigners, other Americans, natives?
So it was a little different for me since I was studying geology. And I really had to really plan my time abroad based on the classes that I needed. And so one of the classes I ended up taking in New Zealand was a field course where for the first week when we got there, which was supposed to be orientation week, we were actually on a 6-day field camp where we were camping in the Southern Alps. So my orientation experience was a little bit different than everyone else. So, but they did a really good job mixing everyone. So for me, I met, like the first day I met the kid who would end up being my best friend the whole time there. He was an American. He studied at Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington. That's my buddy Tom. And then his buddy Marty was another American. And then other than that, I hung out with mainly with 4 or 5 New Zealand kids who I met through geology that first week. And kind of, we were all geology guys, and it worked out where I really liked them and they were really good guys. So they kind of had a really good group of friends. So I was kind of sneaking off while there was like a big group of Americans. So I should add that when we first got there, we traveled around the North and South Island with 60 other Americans through the Arcadia program. 40 of them ended up being from Elon because it was this teaching program and they all had to go there, which was kind of weird. So that they were kind of already a formed group. So there was a big group of Americans, but it's really up to you. Whatever you want to do, you can kind of if you're sick of Americans and you want to kind of go and do your own thing, meet some Kiwis, as they call them down in New Zealand, you can definitely do that. Things like that.
Got it. Yeah. The most important experiences while you're abroad, I would definitely say, are with natives or other foreign students. I think you learn more that way.
Exactly.
Yeah. So going back to my questions, so science students often have a hard time organizing their schedules to allow study abroad, and they don't see the direct benefit that they receive from such an experience. What advice would you give them? Why should they choose to study abroad when it could reduce the science classes and labs they're able to take at OU? And if we could have Katie start that out.
Yeah, so the classes I took abroad actually went in with my major. So with environmental science, there's also some social science classes that you take along with it. So those are sort of the classes I took abroad. They are more environmental studies than science classes. But even if you do have a lot of lab classes to take, I feel like there's definitely some non-lab classes that you could, I don't know, try to think of a good answer to this. I mean, I just thought the study abroad experience was kind of a once in a lifetime experience. So I was willing to kind of give up maybe some lab classes that are only once a year to study abroad. I did have to take a pretty heavy course load my senior year because I decided to study abroad. But just overall, just the study abroad experience is something that I'll always look back on, and being able to take classes kind of with an international perspective, especially in environmental science. It's such a worldly subject. You really want an international viewpoint on things like climate change and just other environmental issues. So I wouldn't have got that if I hadn't decided to study abroad.
Got it. Abby, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so I'm I'm not sure how much help I'm going to be because my program was not at all science at all. It was a Black World Studies program, which is my minor. So I was able to kind of really do my whole minor abroad. So I guess in that sense, like I took care of my minor by studying abroad. But I wasn't able to count any of the classes towards zoology, although we had a research project. So I did get to incorporate I did a research project on Maasai views on Western wildlife conservation. And so that was really neat. I got to actually like travel to the villages, and I had to use an interpreter because when you get that role, they only speak Maasai, not even Swahili. So that was a really interesting and impactful experience for me. But it wasn't, I like chose to do my research project and try and connect my zoology background with that. So as far as organizing it, I will say also that I came in with some like dual credits from high school or like AP courses. So if you have those, definitely try and get them transferred or see if you can get those accepted at OWU, because that frees up room in your schedule. At least it did in mine. So yeah, same with Katie. I was willing to give up like some of the courses at OWU. I knew I would probably miss out on. There was a few courses that I never got to take because I studied abroad. So it was worth it for me though. I mean, the research project I did in Tanzania will always be like a crazy experience in my life, crazy in a good way. So the person who just joined, their photo is funny. So yeah, I'm not sure how helpful that is with like scheduling the whole like science thing, since my minor was kind of exactly what I studied abroad for. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I just didn't know how it would work balancing your labs with all of that, because I'm never taking a single lab. I mean, I'm social sciences and humanities through and through.
yeah, I will say also kind of similar to Katie, I did take like 2 lab courses every semester because of that, which can get a little overwhelming sometimes when you depending on the science class, what lab it is, but it was worth it.
Yeah, that I can attest to that. It's always worth it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I did study abroad like last like fall semester, but I had to come back in the spring and take 3 biology labs. So it's risk or reward. I mean, it was definitely worth it, but coming back in all those labs was a little exhausting, but it definitely was worth the amount of time I spent there.
I personally spread mine out even further. So chemistry for me was the bane of my existence anyway. And it wasn't required to do that much for my major, but some of it was required for what I wanted to do for my master's. So I just saved that for later and picked up some community college credits to fill that out so I could spread it out. It, again, didn't impact my major as much, but I think OWU puts such a big emphasis on being a global citizen and understanding your context in the broader world. And that's going to be useful no matter what you do. Just having a perspective of how things work in a different part of the world, having some cultural competency will take you far no matter what, and it will look good on a resume.